No more curses. Smartphone. You don't have that percent. You got a phone, you know, that little cool stuff. Well, I don't have no something. Back in the day, everybody was on time, on that. You have something?
I have a J spot on 30th Street, between Park and Island. Been there, 10 years.
Oh.
So, yeah, that's a neat workshop.
This is not the first time you've been involved with us.
For the most part, yeah.
How do you find out about it?
I get the emails all the time. Okay, that when you have the workshop, I'm never available.
You involved?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I get the literature, you know. I'm working now with all of the time.
Over ACC, yeah. I mean, ACC. So the active.
Yeah. Workshop and how.
Programs are pretty good. Yeah, those programs are pretty good.
Oh, yeah. I'm grateful. So I was able to quiet just one session, so I was able to get in there and see my state in a room. They're doing AI.
So I don't know, so your emails come straight from HBA?
Mhm.
You should email it because we also, I do outreach for HBA and other small business concerns. Sometimes the ACCI, also ACCI sponsors some charge with Grammars Business Association. Yeah. And also, Harlem Community Development Program, CB10. How are you, sir?
Doing wonderful, man. How are you?
Yeah, good, great, great preach.
Rock and roll, man. Rock and roll, baby.
All right, that's all. I have nothing to say. You know, yeah, and, oh,
I know the one that was the last time.
is that it?
Yeah.
Sure.
about yourself, sir?
I'm excellent.
I registered for the event.
Your name?
Jeffrey Hoffman. Did I say the event right? Or you good?
No, I think.
Okay. Perfect. I have one.
All the way to the front.
Okay. Outstanding. Thank you, sir.
Good.
So the policy is mask on, yes?
You should have your mask on.
Outstanding.
All around.
Thank you, sir. Boy. Good evening. Outstanding. How are you?
I'm good. Hassan Austin.
Austin?
I'm Hassan.
You're Austin. I'm Jeffrey. It's a pleasure to meet you, Hassan.
Nice to meet you, Jeffrey.
How are you, sir?
Pretty good, you know? Pretty good.
You know, that's so you can sit down in the front and no rest of our seat.
Hi,
Good evening.
Hello.
how you doing?
Good to see you, face.
Oh, man.
All right. Like the basketball game, you're all the players coming on the court, man. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
the Zoom. We appreciate your attendance. Just as much as you want to get the information, we want to give it to you. We want to thank the presenters of tonight's event. Manhattan Community Board 10 and the Harlem Business Alliance are doing it in conjunction with myself, Mr. Tariq Buds. I am your moderator for this evening, so I would love for everybody that is here to please thank and clap it up for Walter Edwards, who have made this possible. Secondly, in regards to the Harlem Business Alliance, they have been a crutch for my company thus far in the application process. And we will probably get into that later in when it comes to putting together a team, which is what you're going to need. But not to repeat ourselves, we do have last session in the archives, but we will briefly go through some of the stuff we went through last month. We'll really get into the next steps this month, as last month this too will be archived. My name is Tariq Buds. That is my left. To my left, this is Mr. Hassan Austin. He is an advocate. He has a consultant agency. He has a podcast based on his services. I am grateful to have him here. He's actually on my team, which is why I wanted to have him here. So to his left is Mr. Ian Small. He is a cultivator, a grower since he was a child, but really picked it back up over the last years just because that was a specialty of his. He also is affiliated with the Growers Association that I'll allow him to talk about later on. That's actually where I met him. He was sitting on a panel at that event. To my far left is Mr. Charles Johnson, attorney, part of Manhattan Community Board 10. He is also part of the production of tonight. And really what we're talking about is the application process, what you should be looking for, really what's next for you now that it's legal, things you should understand, things you should know. Sometimes it feels daunting, but we have to be optimistic about it. Things are changing every day. So even as we talk about some of these things, policies are adjusted shortly after that make you say, okay, well, I need to stop, take a step back. But what we're talking about is putting yourself in a position. In the music business, they call it hurry up and wait. So at least you have all your stuff in a row. So when it does come your time to shine, then you are absolutely ready, but you will be in a waiting process. Talk to me, brother.
Darrell T. Dunn is my name. I'm with HBA, the outreach person. If you guys have devices that may go off, please put them on mute.
That's my brother.
As we go down the road, we don't get distracted.
That's my brother. That's my brother. Now, see, Johnson's a man. I ain't gonna lie. He'll tell you himself, though. I promise. I promise. All right. So that's part of the goal of. Thank you for being here, brother. For the process of what we're doing, this is going to be a series. This is part 2 of that series. It seems to be monthly at this point. I'm sure it'll fill up tonight like last time. So I don't know that maybe we need to do it every other week, but at a point we'll figure out what it really is going to take to deliver information to everybody as it's happening. Because as I just said, the updates it's incredible. And to be honest, the experts here are going to really get into that as we go over some of the stuff we go over. So not to repeat myself, but to even just do a slight roll call. Who in here is, by a raise of hands, is familiar with OCM, the Office of Cannabis Management? Okay. So half of the room. Okay, at least at this point. All right, so OCM, Office of Cannabis Management, is really the body that's delivering license, granting license through a board for all of the licenses that some of us will be talking about later. You should be very familiar with OCM. It's definitely the #1 resource for finding out information about what's going on here, or at least what they're telling us is going on here right now. OCM, I think it's .com, it's not .org, right? Oh, actually, no, it's through the state. Right, cannabis through NYC.gov, that's right, through the state. If you put in OCM in Google, Office of Cannabis Manager will pop up. You can click on a link. You definitely want to become familiar with OCM. All right, so last time, I'm going to go through it really briefly, unless there's an interjection from one of these gentlemen. The first thing that we talked about was criminal record. We obviously are aware that through social equity, if that's how you're applying, then yourself or somebody else in your family, close to you, your brother, sister, your mother, your aunt, your father, your nephew, whatever it is, as long as they're a part of it, then you can actually be applying for the application. So we were basically suggesting that, hey, you got to pull your criminal records though. That has to be part of the application. You have to go down to 100 Center Street to do that. So I'm briefly going through what we went through last month. So that was a part of it outside of all the logistics that attorney on the end was giving. Do you want to?
Oh, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Just to clarify too, so last time that we had spoken or whatnot regarding, this is regarding dispensaries. So there was conditional regulations that were during a 60-month or 60-day commenting period that technically ended March 31st. May 31st, but it actually has been extended for another 30 days because there was a portion of the conditional regulations that a lot of people had commented on, so they're going to be making those tweaks. So there's an additional 30-day window for the conditional regulations, but that's what we were talking about last month, because we were right at the end of that commenting period, where it means that every public person has the opportunity to submit comments, suggestions about what these conditional regulations are, which is why it's important to sign up on the OCM website. So if you go to the OCM website, scroll all the way down and put your information, it's not just putting your information, but they're going to ask some nuanced questions like, are you an entrepreneur? Are you a legacy market? Things of that nature, cultivation, whatever. They're going to let you know. You'll get notifications about when the next meetings are and things of that nature. And if you go to the actual meeting notes, you'll see copies of these conditional regulations or whatnot. So that's what we were originally talking about last month. And also too, since then, the last meeting that they had at the beginning of this month or whatnot was they actually released conditional
We take companies to the marketplace, equip them with resources. But by definition, in this cannabis marketplace, we have been last 18, 20 months sort of served in this advocacy capacity in which we advocate for lower fees on a local level, lower retainer fees, insurance, and otherwise. And so it has afforded us a good deal of traction in the marketplace. But in general, social equity is a really key finite point that, as business organizations, you need to really be hyper focused on pivoting your business strategy deep embedded in what social equity is. Why? Because there's no real, let's call it, I'm not the lawyer, so, well, I pay a lot of money for retainers, but there's no necessarily legal mandate for social equity on the local level. Yes, it's on the regulatory application side, but once the market takes shape, there's no legal mandate, but there is a moral mandate. And so there's a challenge for where, on the local level, that they demonstrating a certain morality towards these resources when they come out, these tax revenues, where they're going to go. So you really need to be focused on positioning your business organizations to touch point that social equity requirement that all of the public officials are going to be looking to fulfill. So we'll get into more methodology, but just as a readiness, being prepared for when you organize your business, writing your business plan, it should very much pivot towards what social equity means to you and how you're going to contribute to it, or to what Tariq said earlier, require a out-of-state organization to contribute to it as well. So yeah.
All right, so just to add on to what Hassan was saying too, about the importance of the social equity aspect, the legislative intent, so technically we have something, but it's not the best thing. So realistically around the country, there's no social equity program that actually is successful. A lot of the business or the legalized states that you see on the West Coast, they legalized and then they thought about social equity after the fact though. So that's why it's very important to see what's happening in New Jersey and here, because I think New Jersey took the first step when it came to trying to address it. But I think New York has done so far, a pretty good job at least identifying it in legislation. Now, if it's going to actually be implemented, that's always the problem, because there's always legislative intent, but then the actual implementation is different though. So with that being said, the intent in the legislation, the MARTA Act, was to make sure that these communities that were impacted by the war on drugs, that we focus on revitalizing those communities. Okay, so and as minorities and especially individuals that live here in Harlem who have seen directly the impact on the war on drugs, we really need to be thinking about the nuances that Hassan is talking about, like how can we as a company contribute to creating programs that are going to truly impact this, or truly revitalize our community or attempt to revitalize our community based on the war on drugs. And there's so many different things that can happen when you really think about that. But that's the conversation that you have to have with yourself, with your team, with your community as well, to really see what's going on, because it's all types of approaches that you can take with it, whether it's focusing on the youth or focusing on job, creation, or focusing on mental health programs or whatever the case may be. But that's really the intent in New York, is to make sure these communities that were impacted by the war on drugs, first, in the individuals that were subjected to the war on drugs and that were criminalized and things of that nature, they get access to this market, because technically the reason why they were getting locked up, and now it's legal, so it doesn't make sense. It's like they're good enough to get locked up but not good enough to participate. So that's creating that space, but then also making sure that these communities, whether it's Harlem, whether it's Brooklyn, Queens, should go up Buffalo, wherever, any community that was impacted, how are we going to, as businesses, contribute to helping revitalize that? So that's where I feel like we have that moral obligation too, as a community, but also legally, that's the intent, So hopefully OCM, really pushes those things. But I just wanted to piggyback off that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So I could see we should just jump right into it. I'll get into the recap of last week at the end of this. I really think we should just get into some of this new information. So one of the things that when I meet people, they're like, oh, it's great to meet you. I heard all about you. And they're looking to get into the process. And one of the first things I ask them is, well, do you have your basic ducks in a row? Like, do you have a bank account? Is there a business? Have you paid taxes for 2 or 3 years for this bank account? You can actually do that now through the SAFE Act, which we talked about last month as well. And even in the SAFE Act, they actually double check through surveys and audits where they make sure that minorities are also getting these same loans and opportunities or getting accounts, even if they're just based in cannabis. So other things that really make sense are if you do have those ducks in a row, then what else do you have? Do you have an organizational chart for your business? That's definitely going to be a necessity as they approach you. What else are you really looking to do with your brand? It's a niche situation. So you have to be really specific as to what your brand is really trying to do. And with that, obviously, we want to make sure you have a business plan. And the reason I'm jumping into it is because Hassan already has kind of dove into it a little bit in terms of a business plan and the direction it should take in regards to leading towards social equity, and what you should be focusing on to actually do that. What are some of the things that you can add to your business plan to do that? But people like him actually prepare those plans for you. So that's kind of why I made sure that he was here today. He is actually working on my business plan. So that's why I thought it was important to at least have him speak to the public as well. You want to?
Sure. I just wanted to piggyback on that. Just, in terms of organization, your business organization, things that you should have before you even consider what license you want to pursue. Some basic principles you should be abide by. Clearly, your business plan should certainly serve as almost your Bible for your operations. And within that, it is that social equity strategy, because a lot of the capital and resources that's going to flow through the marketplace is going to be under the auspice of social equity. How do you tap in? How do you pivot to it? It's going to be rooted in how your business plan is set up, particularly your financial piece. And if you are, which you guys should really consider, pursuing investors, pursuing investment, whether debt or equity, your plan should really represent your strategy, and you should have a thread through the whole plan onto that particular license you're pursuing, that real estate, those requirements, operational requirements. But it begins in that plan, and your plan and how it's drafted up. And I stress that strategy because it's a story. You're telling a story as to why, your business is viable, why should it be in this location, and why you're entitled to X amount of resources. We have a methodology that we utilize that is very attractive to the public officials because, again, you really kind of have to meet them halfway. They're vested in this, whether they know or not, they are. And it's important that your plan really points to those touch points that they're looking for. I mean, clearly, you have to have a certain economics around your plan. You also, to Charles' point, is that the morality in this marketplace has to be quantified some kind of way, right? We gotta put some dollars to that at some point. And so a lot of times that burden can lie on you as an individual, but also the big corporate, where that meets in the middle. And so you should really be developing your plans with that in mind.
Other thing I was going to say, and just to piggyback off of what Hassan was mentioning as well, is this is why I strongly encourage everyone to go to OCM's website, because it lists out the different type of license classes. If you plan on going for an actual license class, but I want people to remember this too, is that we're talking about a brand new industry period for New York State. So that means that it's not just going to be licenses that are going to be required, but we're going to need ancillary businesses, that are tied into it, which is why a prime example of me giving out or telling you that they recently have the conditional regulations for packaging and labeling. Like I said, that also gives the guidance when it comes to marketing and advertising. So, the people that we know that are great marketers, great advertisers, great PR people, they're going to have to make sure that, whatever they're advising you as a business or anybody else, or you are going to be advising people, you need to make sure that it follows, that criteria. So like I said, I strongly encourage people to at least look at the license types, the classes, because I know there's multiple type of license classes, but also even if you don't want to touch the plan, there's ancillary businesses that we really need. There's advocacy, that we really need, those type of things. So I think it's great that businesses are going to have to create social equity or impact plans. So for instance, with us, we're also focused on distribution, but we're focused on the B2B aspect of it. So we're creating a software platform to help simplify the distribution needs, but we're also blending it in with actual transportation, but we're only focused on business to business. So that's me thinking of, okay, well, this is a part of the industry that needs, focus on from my perspective, but there's so many different aspects of it. So just think about that part. Also, I would suggest too, thinking about parts of the industry where there may not be a lot of people in that, it's not going to be as competitive too, because like I said, they're talking, if we're really looking at numbers, saying 4.7 billion as far as revenue, as for the state, just revenue for the state, it's probably gonna be even higher than that when we really, really think about it. But your business niche or whatever, that's gonna be a market share, so we just got to think about those things. And the last thing I want to add on is when it comes to investments too, thinking of the type of business entity that you have is going to be important, so as typically and historically, if you're gonna raise funds from angel investors or VCs and things of that nature, you would try to set up like a corporation type of status, but then there's some people that want to do LLCs, and there's ways of doing it around that way too. But it's really looking at the business entity, what fits you the best, how often you want to file taxes too, because not all the different type of business entities file taxes at the same time, but that's something else to keep in mind too when you're thinking about that.
So something else to consider, as I kind of lightly touched on earlier, which is really finding your own niche. I mean, it may be ideal to aspire for, say, a micro license where I want to do it all. You just have to understand that, there's a lot that comes with that. And at this point, it probably is not going to happen right away, even just how they're giving out licenses present. They're doing them individually. They're not doing them under just a micro license. However, finding your niche is really important. And it's also important to understand, as I said last month, that I usually equate this to the music business. You don't have to be the guy on the microphone or the DJ or the producer to make money in that business. There's a lot of ways to make money in the music business. And there's a lot of ways to make money in this. So you don't have to have your hands on the plant. You don't have to grow. You don't have to sell. But there's a way for you to find your way in this business. And that's what's important to understand about the variety of licenses that they are offering so you can determine your niche. Would you like to talk about some of those licenses?
Yeah.
Even briefly? We lightly went on it last month. And I didn't think we were going to go there, but it seems like the conversation is needed, as I'm seeing really a bunch of new faces in front of me, not necessarily online, but at least in front of me. And not to put you on the spot, but there are quite a few other than just some of the top ones that people are really considering that they should have. Hassan, do you want to talk first about that?
I'll just briefly, but I think Charles might be more
Talk about it with Picky.
Yeah. But again, my focus primarily is.
So for instance, I just realized that and I was talking to the Grow King about this outside, is that they've already had a home, obviously it's already a law, you can grow in your house, but they amended that policy. And so if you start to understand and follow the amendments, there could be maybe more opportunity for you. There could be, you don't go to jail because you're actually following the law. But these sort of things are important because I would love to get a grow kit at the house because my wife is excited about it. But I just need to go about it the right way, right? So These are things that are important for us to even grasp and understand that as the licenses are being distributed, because the cultivator licenses are really the only ones that have largely been given out. But as they start to be distributed, you want to be aware of what your niche is and where you can fall in line and do certain things. The gentleman right here, he's into extracts. He's a lab. He needs a lab. He's that sort of technician with cannabis. And so his focus will probably be there, but his interest may be in other places. So these are things to consider. Sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, again, just try and keep this process simple, because if you overthink it, certainly, you go down a rabbit hole, waste your time, waste your money, and none of us want to do that, right? And so I will say, just to sort of back it up, just give you a little backdrop, because the market is so new. Typically with these new markets, you do see people that often may look to take advantage of, your misinformation. And, we see a lot of misinformation around cannabis. And so sometimes, you may have people take advantage of that. And so that's why it's very important that your business organization package is pretty tight, pretty lean. We'll have to go out and get this one and that one, but also be mindful for, high retainer fees. You typically may see that, so you want to guard against that kind of activity, just, as you learn the market, some of the things that you'll experience in the marketplace. But in general, keep it very simple and identify, your location, your public official, your municipality that will serve your interests, your parcel of real estate will best serve your interests. And again, as I mentioned previously, consider, the financial aspect of what license you want to procure. You may want to go micro, cultivator. All of these things have a cost basis to it. And if you haven't built your plan out accordingly, you're going to fall short. Again, you don't want to waste your time and money. You want to be very lean, linear approach to how you want to go and who you want to put onto your team, because team development is everything. You got to have someone on the team, whether somebody's doing a website, somebody's doing, marketing, SEO. You want to really assemble a team that's going to get you across the finish line. We do a lot, Charles does a lot, we all do a lot, but that's really what it is. It's your networking and building these alliances. We like to call it NWA, networking with an attitude. Like, you got to be out here and pulling people together onto your team that's going to get you across that finish line. And that's really where it is. You have people like Charles, and we certainly guide you on licensing, but you must be assembled a certain way before you pursue that. You want to have a real good trajectory where you want to go.
Real quick, okay. Yes, please. Okay, all right, so our conversation outside, obviously it led to part of this where things are changing so much, so you have your own stance on being reluctant on kind of getting involved at all until.
Exactly.
Talk about that.
Until things take place, because like we were saying, things change every day. It doesn't make sense for me to jump out of the window and want to get a cultivator's license and do all these things when I've set myself up for it, and then only to be turned down in a week or so after they, basically make it right. So I'm definitely holding back. I would love to get my brand out as soon as possible. I would love to be outside with a van selling my product, but the law's not into place yet. So to me, I'd rather just wait and fall back until things are in place.
So just to add to what he's saying, or add a different perspective too, because I can totally understand that perspective. Because again, a lot of people, and I've heard this before as well. A lot of people are thinking about being first to market. That's what a lot of people are thinking about. But then there's also a negative when it comes to being first to market as well. And you have to really deal with a lot of the growing pains, and especially when you're talking about a brand new regulated industry. I personally think, and as we see, I think cannabis is going to be an over-regulated market, especially in New York, because I think the culture here on the East Coast is totally different from the West Coast. So just how we approach things here in New York are totally different from California. So I think it's going to be extremely regulated, over-regulated, which goes to his point about how that means it's going to be constant changes and things of that nature. Also to keep into perspective too, cannabis is still a Schedule I drug federally. So which means that there is no interstate commerce, which means that, yeah, there's a Safe Banking Act that's down in DC, but if you really look at the history, it's gone through Congress multiple times, but it keeps falling at Senate or whatnot. And I think that that's going to be a continuation for a while, to be honest with you. However, there are state, I guess there's state things that are done to help you when it comes to just the tax modifications. So just real quick, the reason why Schedule I is important is because that's the reason why it justifies the IRS for overtaxing cannabis under 280E in the tax code. Okay, so that means that if you're moving, or if you're pushing, doing anything when it comes to a product that's listed as a Schedule I drug, and you're trying to get tax deductions from it, they pretty much preclude you from getting a lot of the tax deductions though. Now, that's from a federal level. From a state level, California is similar as well. There's state relief when it comes to the state 280E aspect of it, but you still have to deal with the federal portion of it though. So that's why, like I said, the Schedule I thing is so important, okay? But again, because of that, that means that there's limited banking access as well. So that means you can't set up a cannabis business account with Chase. You can't set up a cannabis business account with TD. However, there are credit unions that you can go to, and we will be compiling those lists as well. This is stuff that we're constantly looking out for. I know personally that there's even the bank that we deal with, Valley Bank or whatnot. That's an actual, yeah, you know about it, Valley Bank. However, I'm gonna tell you right now, opening up a cannabis account is like, you got to go through a whole bunch of checks and balances, which includes what Hassan is talking about with your business plan. I mean, they want to see all types of stuff, everything times 10 though, you know? So again, it's being mindful of those things though. And I guess to circle it all back is to say that because there's limited access to funding as traditional startups or traditional businesses, small businesses will go for, think about collaborating and connecting together, you know, as a community, you know, organizing and getting just people that you know are going to be serious about this and putting dollars together, you know, because that's going to be another avenue that we have to really explore, especially as a community, and especially in a new industry. That's what I wanted to point out.
Yeah, let me, wonderful point, Charles made, wonderful point. I think, you know, considering, you know, I said about networking, to really consider formulating cooperatives in this process, especially most co-ops, most especially as it relates to real estate. You know, what will certainly be a sensitive area for these dollars as they begin to start to disperse is how those organizations are set up on the ground that can, you know, tap into those funds, public and private funds combined. And so we use the business incubator model, which certainly guarantees and assures a certain distribution to a certain group, to a minority group and otherwise. And it's the same sort of co-op setup, but again, you know, if you have a 20,000 square feet building down the street, it's very effective for 10, 15 people to pull up to that building, apply licensing accordingly, but acquire that building as a co-op. Certainly, you know, you don't want to have competitive licenses in there, but this incubator model is really the best opportunity to tap into these funds as they begin to disperse out in the marketplace. It's really just, again, about how you're set up. Are you set up, you know, look at it very simple as, you know, some of the bears they feed, right? They go right to where the fish jump in the water. Like, you got to put yourself in on that wave. So when these dollars start to disperse, your organization, your incubators, your co-ops are set up accordingly. So by all means, encourage to get together as groups and build organizations, co-op organizations, so you can guide, your interests are better protected. And frankly, you know, you'll get more attention because no one's really pursuing that option, especially as it relates to Black people. You know, incubating yourselves to the marketplace together as a collective, powerful stuff you guys should consider.
I'm glad you said co-ops too, because actually co-ops that's one of the licensed classes that you can do though. So that's something that again, I encourage everyone to go there. On OCM, they've done a great job of just breaking down, simplifying information, especially they have like little simple fact sheets. So there's one that literally lists out the license class types and then also the restrictions, because I've heard this too from a lot of people that where there's a misunderstanding that okay, well, if I grow, I want to have a dispensary too, or I want to have a manufacturer. That's not the case. Like, there's no vertical integration. That's what those essentially would be, where you have a license that allows you to do all aspects. But when you look at the co-op licenses, it allows for a type of vertical integration to a certain degree, where it allows you to cultivate, manufacture, it's two different ones though. So it really just depends on what you're trying to do. But again, the co-op thing is something that I don't think people are really looking at. That's one. The other thing too that I'm thinking about and noticing as well is when you look at New Jersey, for instance, their legislation, it allows for the dispensary, I think it's class 5 dispensary licenses, to also have consumption lounges, or have access to consumption lounges as long as they fit certain requirements as far as separation. Here in New York, that's not the case. There's an actual separate license class for consumption lounges. And I want people to really think about that, because when you're talking about, especially here in Harlem, when we have a lot of NYCHA buildings, that NYCHA buildings has tied into federal funding. So that goes back to what I was mentioning to you guys before about the whole Schedule 1, aspect of it. So that means that even though the MARTA bill allows for 6 plants to be, grown inside your home, if you're in NYCHA buildings, that doesn't apply to you. However, these are still individuals that are New York residents, and we can't disenfranchise them from participating in the cannabis market. So then how does that happen? Okay, that means that we would have to have consumption lounges that allow them that space to do that, because otherwise, if they don't, then they get caught, in their NYCHA building. It's a wrap, and please believe that. Let's believe that OCM now they're continuously growing as a regulated. As a regulated entity in the state. They went from having one person with Chris Alexander to literally now I think they have about 100 individuals, but they're focused on doing about 300 for the state. So there are going to be individuals that are coming around really checking these things, those checks and balances aspects of it though. So that's one thing. And the other thing too, I just thought about this, and I need to check, because I know that the state assembly last week they tried to slide in a bill that would essentially increase illicit sales that are going on that you see around here. As far as the gray market, they would increase penalties and things of that nature. I think they're putting it under the Department of Taxation or something to that extent. I know that they were trying to do that, but I knew that they had until midnight, because if the state Senate passed it, then it was going to be fine. But that's just to let you know that a lot of these gray market situations, or the illegal things that you see going on now, where you have people just selling willy-nilly type of stuff, that's not going to happen for too long. Because you got to remember, whenever you're dealing with a state, you're dealing with tax revenue, and you're impacting the tax revenue, then that's a problem. And that means that as far as the community, all these expungements that have gone on with cannabis and things of that nature, a lot of those things are going to be adjusted too, because now you're talking about you've chosen criminality as opposed to really going towards a market that's legalized. So now we're thinking of a whole nother profiling situation that's going to happen here, in our communities, not just in Harlem, but everywhere else though. So like I said, it's a multitude of things to think about though, but those consumption lounges is another thing that no one's really paying attention to, because that's going to be something that's going to be needed.
So obviously we're unpacking a lot. Pause. We're talking about a lot here, and it may become a little overwhelming. I'm glad that I see people taking notes. It is archived. Don't feel pressured that you have to remember everything that's coming out of everybody's mouths today, but it's good that you are tuned in. One of the things that Hassan talked about is something that he alluded to, something that I wanted to go into a little bit, is the importance of the NWA, networking with an attitude. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, right. I'm a networker. That's kind of what I do. That's one of the reasons that I've been able to even establish the brand that I have internationally. For those that don't know, I've been to 6 continents for cannabis, trade shows, conventions. I've been all around the world for this. And I pat myself on the back. My name actually rings bells in a lot of these places. And it helps with the expansion of my business and the expansion of my brand. I'm a marketing guy. I'm a marketing professional, a publicist, a promoter. So when I got into the industry, I got it in the marketing side, the legal part of the industry, that is. I got it on the marketing side. That's why I'm saying you don't have to touch the plant to actually be in the industry and make money and even further find your niche. Because part of what we're going to talk about is your team. He's on my team. Charles is on my team. You understand? So these are people that you need, not necessarily just them, but you need to develop a team. You need an accountant. Some people say you need lobbyists, right? So politicians work well. Having a relationship with the police department actually works well. But networking in general, there are a variety of events that take place like this all throughout the week, just because it is growing. There are larger events. There are now conventions that come here on a regular basis. The last time we did this, MJ Unpacked was in town. Just last week, CW's, yeah, the expo was in town. These are national events that are now coming to New York because it is legal here. But when I started, I used to have to go to California and Vegas to go to these trade shows and conventions and even festivals. But now it's coming here as well. I think it's important to also go to those places as well. When you start to develop relationships with retailers or product producers or attorneys or advocates that you meet in other cities, it furthers your network. It allows you to expand. I can't make this up. Last week, I got a call from a friend of mine in Lesotho. Lesotho is a legal territory in Africa. He called me and said, "Hey, bro, I know you got access to seed banks. I need some seeds. I need regulated seeds over here in Africa." I was like, "Okay, cool." I called like 3 people and they were like, "What you need?" One was in Italy, one was in Amsterdam, and one was in the Canary Islands. And it's only because I travel over there and I see these people 5, 6, 7, 8 times. We hang out, we network, we share information for and with each other. And now it makes my life and job easier to expand my brand. So piggybacking on what he was saying, networking with an attitude is really important. It's kind of underrated for what you actually are going to do when you actually start moving and shaking. It's going to even help you in the process of moving and shaking. If I wasn't networking with attitude, I wouldn't have met Miss Regina from the Harlem Business Alliance. It's these types of events that are produced by companies like this that offer community help that you want to get involved with. You need to be around these circles. I met this brother. I'm gonna let him talk about it briefly, about the organization, because he's a cultivator, but I met that brother when he was speaking on a panel, and I said, yeah, he is that person that I'd like to have involved as a cultivator, and because of further the organization. Would you like to talk about the organization?
Well, I'm new with the organization, so I don't have much information on it at the moment. But I wanted to also piggyback on what you were saying too, with having your lane. Me being a cultivator, I know a lot of seed breeders and a lot of people who want to grow. They're not even thinking about where you're going to get these seeds from. You know, so that's something what I'm trying to also do myself, is start my own genetics company, so I can start making my own seeds and be able to network with an attitude with people who need seeds, because there's a lot of people who want plants, seeds, They don't know where to get it, especially in New York.
Just want to add on to what everybody's been saying about the importance when it comes to networking too. Yeah, the other part too, I think, especially as minorities, we need to be mindful of is that we're very underrepresented in this space. You know, I think New Jersey, the Business Insider and Leafly did job reports or whatnot and to show the reflection of African Americans, minorities in this space. But African Americans, period, though, represent less than 3% of the space when it comes to co-founders, CEOs, in as far as cannabis businesses, you know, in the whole country. But, you know, we were arrested at a 90% rate, you know, all across the country, though. So I think it's extremely important because when you go to these events like New Jersey, Cannabis Insider, all these various events, even the expos, like I was going to since last year, like you'll get a chance to see some faces that look like you, and you're also able to connect and network with those people too. Because I think that, and this may be unpopular or whatnot, but I do believe that as a minority group, as African Americans, that we're going to have to try to think about supply chains and creating supply chains amongst our communities too, though, because as you see a lot of people coming into New York, they may not have the best interest for, you know, New York as far as social equity and things of that nature. The reason why you see the predatory things that Hassan is talking about, that Jersey's even trying to watch and things of that nature, is because we've seen it throughout the country. You know, so if they show me that they're going to do this in Illinois and in Chicago, Illinois and Colorado and California, Oklahoma, Oakland, then it doesn't take rocket science to know that, yeah, you can tell me you're going to do social equity here in New York, but you don't have any intent, you know, type of thing though. So I think that, but at the same time, because they're so prominent in this space, it's going to force, you know, small businesses and things of that nature still have to do business with them. I'm not saying not to do business with them, but I think that we don't need to rely solely on that. I think we need to create our own infrastructure, our own symbiotic relationship when it comes to all aspects, from the C's to everything else, from the tech to compliance, to where we don't necessarily have to lean on any other groups when it comes to just adding into the supply chain or whatever we need. Because again, I just don't think that, I know that there's people who have intents when it comes to social equity and revitalizing these communities that were impacted by the war on drugs, but I think that it's when it's us, we have more of an invested interest though. But at the same time, like my mama says, all skin folk ain't kin folk. So that means that just because they look like us doesn't mean that they have the intent though. So I think we need to start identifying those people who are serious about getting into this industry, as Regina always says, creating that economic wealth, you know, for the community, but also making sure that they're serious about fixing the community and then creating our own type of buyers club type of situation. But the only way for that to happen is by educating yourself, number one, and then going to these conferences, because these conferences allow you to see things that you didn't necessarily think about, you know. So like, we can all sound educated about this now, but to be honest with you, when I first started, you know, I knew to a certain degree, but the more I got involved and the more I went to these conferences, the more I started networking with individuals. Like, I mean, you'll see that there's literally 6 degrees of separation. So, and it's a small community, you know. So, and truth be told, I feel like it's a more welcoming community as well. You know, people are willing to help, but you have to be out there, you know, looking for it and be willing to, you know, really contribute to the industry and the community.
Sure.
So I'd like to bring up Miss Regina. Obviously, she is also on my team. Miss Regina is the best. Obviously, Harlem Business Alliance does a lot for us. They have actually instructed us in a bunch of directions that made sense for us. They actually pointed us to the accountant that is on our team. They also suggested, young men, you need to start doing education, which is why I'm here in conjunction with them. So please, Ms. Regina.
Good evening, everyone. So the Harlem Business Alliance jumped into this space because we were very disturbed by what was happening in other states across the country. We were particularly disturbed about what was happening to Black people around the country. Because we know here in the Harlem community, raised, living, and working here, that Black people here in Harlem and other 7 communities in New York City and more communities throughout New York State were targeted by the war on drugs and the Rockefeller drugs. So who should be benefiting from this new legal market more than Black folks? No one. If you were impacted, if you were harmed, you need to be at the front of the line. You need to be prioritized. And that is what we have been fighting for. It's a tough fight. It's a very tough fight because people don't want to see you in this space. You have to talk to your elected representatives. Don't ask them what's happening and what's being done for minorities, because we have seen that in the past, regulations and rules for minorities benefit all the other minorities and not Black people. We're always at the bottom. This young man over here, he made a good point. Why should I step out here? Because they're always looking to recriminalize us, because that was a huge income generator for upstate communities where they house Black bodies in their prisons. So we have to be real clear. There's a lot of economic interest in making certain that we remain the consumers that we have been for generations. So we are here today, and what they have shared with you is very important. It's changing. The rates are changing. The first people who were given conditional licenses were hemp farmers upstate, and you can count the number of Black hemp farmers on one hand, okay? So all of those licenses are going to white hemp farmers, okay? Okay, all right, teach, share. Y'all need to be real clear about what's happening. So, but we have cultivators who are growing great product, and it's important that that great product and those cultivators be given an opportunity to grow and distribute that great product to dispensaries and businesses that we run and operate. We don't want garbage. We don't want somebody else's leftovers. Quality is very important. Why? Because we know good shit when we smell it and when we smoke it, all right? Okay, straight talk, all right? Sorry. Okay, so
Give it to them.
we are continuing to work and to call a question about the way these regulations are being developed, rewritten, because we, again, need to be at the forefront. That looks good. And so the one thing that I want y'all to think about also is that being first to market is very important. We've seen in Massachusetts and some other states, those businesses, they get out to market first with high quality. We do extremely well. So we've been pushing for us to be first to market. We also know that there are huge multi-state operators that have received medical licenses that are operating here in the state of New York. And there was a recent article about Green Thumb getting a former prison site upstate and got all kinds of tax incentives, financing. I mean, it was sweet the way they were to work the deal. And this is a family that came from, what is it? A whiskey business. They were able to survive prohibition. We weren't able to come out of prohibition with any huge liquor companies, but they were. Jim Beam. Okay. And then you got the Wrigley family. You know, you have the Rockefellers who are investing in, you know, hemp and in cannabis. So you have these multi-millionaires, these huge billion-dollar companies that are growing huge spaces to cultivate recreational weed because they plan to be first to market. We can't allow that to happen. We cannot allow our elected officials to let them be the first ones to market. We need to be the first ones to market. We need to make certain that brothers like this are protected, that he's able to transition, because when you transition, you have to do certain things. Your product absolutely has to go through a process where it meets the quality standards. And that's very important. We should feel 100% comfortable with the weed that we get, that it is good for our health and it doesn't adversely affect us, right? So that is very important. But that's a process, that's money, making that transition. So what kind of assistance is going to be provided to help them make that transition to a legal business? So there's a lot of things that are at play here. I was at a meeting this afternoon. The mayor is pulling together a group of people to weigh in on how to get it right, because we know that no other state in the United States has gotten it right. And we also know that these regs are kind of tricky, and the way things are unfolding here in New York is looking kind of shaky. So we need to do everything that we possibly can to make certain that we come out benefiting from this industry big time. And I always say we need thousands of Black-owned businesses across the state that are making millions and billions of dollars. We're not talking about 100,000 here and there. We're talking about millions. You don't need to make millions of dollars, at least, at a minimum, million. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Virginia. Trust me, she is just as passionate every day about this community. She cares and loves the Black people that live here and the community at large. And she has been a really big help to me and my company in this process. All right, so one of the things I want to talk about was establishing alliances, right? So I and my company, we established an alliance with the Harlem Business Alliance. You too need to do that. You can be from Brooklyn, you can be from Queens, you can be from the Bronx. They all have facilities that can do that for you, that can assist you along in the process. So we are going to get into questions. It is 7:30. We only have a half hour left. Do we have questions online? We don't? No questions online? Okay, all right. So we'll do a Q&A for now. This could be elongated, and we want to make sure that anybody and everybody could reach out and ask a question. So, my brother Kevin, talk to me.
All right, I come here. I'm on the concentrate aspect of the business. I'm on the concentrate aspect of the business, and I sure well know that you have to pivot at this time. You know, right now, here today, I'm sort of a pivot in the cultivation aspect, watching you with your food there. I wish you nothing but the best. I released the strain this year out here in New York. Of course, I ain't got it. So we have to work together, like you said, to co-op, work together, because no one's gonna help us here. And we, like she was saying, we can't allow them come here and take from ours. This is our space. This is New York. This is Metropolis. I was born and raised here. You know, I suffered when they had all those laws, 3 strikes you're out, you know, getting arrested for marijuana time and time again. They even tried to put a kingpin charge on me for marijuana in New Jersey, and I beat the charge. But, you know, I'm like you, attentive, stepping out. I feel like a rabbit, like sticking your head out of the hole. And I'm here because I want to play, and like you want to put your brand out there. I want to be able to help you guys to concentrate. If you have products that you have and you want to convert them into oils, waxes, or diamonds or dirt, you know, I'm the guy to come see it. I've been processing over 10 years. And in my alliance, like he said, we have over 250 years of experience growing and processing cannabis. So the question I have to you guys was in the cultivation aspect for nurseries, like for the licensing of nurseries, how would you go about that?
Yeah, they actually, there's a nursery license as well, from my understanding though. But so I guess the main thing is really, you just have to really follow OCM.
Yeah, I just learned about all of this today.
Yeah. So yeah,
I'm so grateful for you.
Yeah, absolutely. No. That's why we have these things though, you know. So even with Community Board 10, we were, and Mark Levine pointed this out to me last week when I spoke to him. We were the first community board in Manhattan to have a cannabis forum that's, you know, focused on really educating the community, and we're starting to see that a lot in the city. So the goal was for it to make sure that all these community boards were doing this, because it's going to impact everybody. Because also in the legislation, you have to go through your community board, you know, as far as getting letters of support and things of that nature. But to answer your question about nurseries, yeah, it's really just looking at following OCM. That's why I said sign up, because at these meetings is where they're doing a lot of these things. So even when the regulations I just pointed out right now, these conditional ones, you would have to click on the previous meeting to even see it there, you know, and then the only way you would know is unless you were, you know, present type of stuff. So really following OCM to see where these conditional licenses come out, because they're going to do conditional regulations for nurseries, and there's going to be a 60-day commenting period. So you could be able to read it and say, hey, you know what, that's not going to be practical, that's not going to work. And then you put your comments together. And also there's other organizations, the New York City Cannabis Industrial Association. There's so many various organizations that are doing things that are also getting communities together to put out like joint comments or whatever. But that's the best thing I can say, because it hasn't come out yet. So just to really follow that though, and truth be told, continues to follow what's going on here, because 9 times out of 10 we're going to be doing a workshop, you know, specifically for that license class though, you know, but because that's the goal, is to continuously do things throughout, you know, each month, following this whole process, and even after licenses come out, continuously following that and tracking that piece too though, because we need to make sure that we're holding people's, you know, feet to the fire, that, you know, that the funds that they said they're going to be putting in the community, we need to be tracking all those things. But that's the answer to the question in a nutshell.
Anybody else question?
So somebody in the Zoom chat asked, how do I engage with my political elects in Queens County? I feel like I'm getting a lot of unanswered calls and emails.
I can answer that.
Certainly, you can expect that, you know, that's not unusual. And so, as I alluded to earlier, there's a particular way to engage the public officials. You know, they also are often misinformed. So you can expect, them not necessarily engaging you due to their own lack of knowledge and education about the marketplace in general. But again, to what I said earlier, in terms of, you know, you organizing your business organization in such a way that the public officials, you ultimately can force their hand. You know, if you're presenting your cannabis organization to make significant contributions to social equity, that public official will be so inclined to return your phone call. So, you can arbitrarily calling them, certainly you can expect a little bit of that, but certainly it depends on how evolved is your package when you are making that contact to the official. You just have an idea, as opposed to you having an evolved package that says, hey, we want to contribute $2,000 a year to medical cannabis education, and we're submitting our package for licensing, and I'd like to talk to you about it. So things like that certainly garner attention from the public officials, because, you know, they all looking to put an S on their chest. And so you have to tailor your engagement accordingly.
Definitely what Hassan said is on point. You definitely need to tailor it, because the more that you have, the more you look like a business, you know, the more likely, you know, people are gonna pay attention, you know, type of thing. Because think about it, from when Amazon came here and they were thinking about trying to set up shop, you know, they didn't just come, you know, like they had a plan and everything else, which is the attractive thing. Other thing to remember too, like I said, they're elected officials, meaning like, you know, so that means that we have a lot more power and pull than you know, than we think though. So sometimes even, like I said, putting their feet to the fire, really putting that pressure, letting people know that, hey, this elected official isn't somebody that's responsive to their constituents, things of that nature. You'd be surprised how fast people how fast people you know, respond to things though. But I would suggest also getting in contact with your community board. And you said in Queens, right? You said
Queens, yeah.
yeah, Queens. Every borough has community boards. Okay, every borough has community boards. So that means that, that means that when it comes to Queens or whatever, you contact your community board, reach out to the district manager, find out what is the contact information, because sometimes the contact information is antiquated as well. Because remember, now we're in post-COVID, so some numbers don't work or whatever. But really, utilizing your community board is number one. And number two, I just feel like as a person, you know, if you really, really want it, you're gonna find a way to you know, to find out where this elected official is gonna be, because they have a website that typically tells you an agenda of things that they're gonna be at and locations they're gonna be at. So, you know, that's another way to get FaceTime as well. You know, like we had a forum out here in April, a cannabis forum where we had elected officials, we had people from OCM and things of that nature. I know folks who had been trying to get in contact with elected officials waited to that event because they knew that they were going to be there at that event. You know, I'm sure, I mean, we had even congressmen out there as well. So just thinking about that, following their agenda, looking on their website, but really contacting your community board too, because they can give you direct information, or somebody in that office that you need to schedule something with as well.
One more from mine, if that's okay. Now that hemp growers have been awarded conditional licenses, does OCM owe 162 conditional licenses to social justice applicants? Now that hemp growers have been awarded conditional licenses, does OCM owe 162 conditional licenses to social justice applicants?
I guess they're doing it based on the
They're
percentage.
doing it based on the number.
Okay, that's what I was
Based on the number.
Yeah,
Because I think they gave out 36 licenses, so we were just subtracting
I think
164.
So they're going off of that percentage that's supposed to be going towards social equity.
Yes.
Got you. Did you have?
No, I'm just about, they did award 168 something, 162 licenses.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't, because it was the way it was worded.
What he's saying are the remaining are to be entitled to
Social equity.
Yeah, that's what
To make it to 50%.
Got you. Oh, okay.
But the answer is yes.
Yes.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
Yes.
The answer is yes. One more time, my sister, please. I got you, my brother.
My question is twofold. Right, what the information that I received, my brother's the person that was arrested or was impacted. I'm the business owner.
Okay.
And I was told that only his children or his parents would be allowed to work with him and not. And secondly, the application itself, I hear, is like hundreds of pages. And who's assisting us?
People
The
like this
application.
gentleman.
Yes. Okay, so I guess people like him, but also people like the gentleman here, which I've been suggesting that you need to develop a team to help you with this process. This isn't something that you will do by yourself, because almost every document that you get will probably be 100 pages that you have to go through. The first question, no, you can get it through your brother. Your brother, if I'm correct, and you might want to correct me, your brother has to have 51% of the company because he's the one that's been impacted by. It doesn't matter, I know, between you and your brother, but that's what it is. That's just an understanding, if that makes some sense. But you can
Definitely expound.
No, yeah, what he said was, okay, that's correct or whatnot, because I think, well, it depends on, are you trying to do a dispensary? Or
I would
you,
like to, yes.
okay, so it goes back to the OCM thing. If you look at their, if you go on their website, they have those conditional regs there, and in those conditional regs, it tells you, actually that criteria or whatnot that you were talking about. But again, that could change too, because remember, it's still, the 60-day period is ended, but then it's been extended as well. So that might particularly change, because I know people have brought that, raised that or whatever. But yeah, what he said was correct as far as just that, that percentage piece. So now I think they're gonna have to provide a little bit more detail to it though. So just expect that part. But OCM is gonna be able to provide that. There was another, it was a two-part question.
Just the application being so expensive.
Yeah, so, and that's just everywhere. And this is why I say I encourage everyone, it goes back to what they were mentioning before about going to conferences outside of the state. I think that it's important to get as knowledgeable as possible in this industry, not just for New York, but just the industry in general, because even the perspectives that I have when it comes to social equities, because I have a mentor that's out there in Colorado, John Bailey, that's tied into Wanda James, and Wanda James is the first African-American to have a cannabis dispensary out there, so, but just hearing about how individuals that look just like us are dealing with it in their municipalities, like that helps us, because New York doesn't have to make the same mistakes though. But the only reason that I'm even connected to that is because, again, going out to things, connecting with folks, somebody that I know that knows him, it's mutual connections, things of that nature. So really educating yourself on what's going on in other municipalities or other jurisdictions, because that can also give you insight on what you see with New York, because it might be like, this kind of looks like the same stuff that's going on in Chicago or Illinois. Okay, well, I need to say something about it or whatever. But if you really look at other folks and you start to get inside the industry, you'll see that this is common. Like there's hundreds and hundreds of pages, because again, it's regulated. They're talking about seed to sale. So every seed is going to have essentially a social security number, and it's going to be extremely regulated. So if we're not, and as a community, we're not accustomed to being in extremely regulated markets, so we have to make that adjustment and pivot too, but also know that it's going to be a continuous thing. So 100 pages, yeah, but then later on, 6 months down the road, they might ask you to submit an additional 300 pages on something, you know what I mean? But we just have to be, as business owners and as people, we just have to be mindful that's going to be, that's just going to be the thing we have to do.
So first, I want to say this is a phenomenal panel, and props to you guys. This is really incredible that you're getting this information out. I have a particular question for the Grow King. California is failing as a cannabis market. My position is that for New York to be successful, they need to make the legacy market a partner and not a competitor, which is what California has done. And my question for Grow King is, what would entice you to join the regulated market? What is it that the state can do? What is it the CCB? What is it the OCM? What can be done that will make it appealing to you to be a partner to the regulated market and not a competitor? Thank you.
Great question.
Good question.
Really just equality. As growers, we want to get paid to do the work, and we don't want to just get paid as a worker. We want to get paid as a creator of
Ownership.
what they call master grower. You know what I mean?
So if I may, one thing that I've heard from other growers is that growers would be able to come to a facility that the state creates where your product would be tested. No questions where you did it or what you did, or if you would pay taxes on the sale, but you bring your product, the state tests it. If you test, it goes to a processor, you get paid right there, you get a tax stamp, you pay your taxes, and off we go. That was one idea. Just one of the things that I think will be very helpful to the legacy market, and I respect the things that you just said. You want to be respected, you want to be owners, but that's not a specific proposal. I just presented a specific proposal of a way that you could be respected and brought into the market. I think it would be tremendous, and I'd like to talk to you more and work with you about this. What specific things can people in the legacy market propose to the state. They're gonna be, we have all of these comment periods that are coming up for everything. What specific proposals can the legacy market provide to the state that will say, if you do these things, we will want to participate? And I don't think the state gets what that is at all now. I don't think they are talking to you. And I think that needs to happen.
And I think that'll, I'm sorry. I think basically that's gonna take time too, because it's just getting started. So we, as growers, we don't even know yet because we haven't had that opportunity.
So I respect you that it takes time, but this is happening now. If you don't speak now, you are going to be left behind, and you're gonna look like California. So now is the time where we have to step up. We have to get the legacy market to say, these are the things that we need to make us comfortable joining the regulated market, or New York's gonna be a failed market like California. And I don't wanna see that, and I don't think anyone.
What do y'all answer that, Lieutenant?
Yeah, so I have a suggestion. As I said, we put forth a business incubator model. What that really means in plain language is that when dollars are allocated, they're prioritized to these groups, individuals, organizations that support the initiatives, equality and otherwise. And so certainly equality can be very equate to social equity, but to say what is the solution or suggestion the state should consider, I don't want to get too deep into it, we don't have too much time, but ideally we require, or rather suggest the applicant to include an actual commitment to social equity, whether it is money, capital, volunteerism, equipment, tools, as an attachment to your application. And again, if you do this in a co-op kind of standpoint, you're going to garner a great deal of attention from your local municipality. And so if the state required applicants to do that, and it's a great way to track the dollars where they go, but most importantly, quantify those results. Is there equality in the marketplace, employment rates, workforce development, social training, so forth. But you have to put forth a system that procures, or at least gets a piece of the pie, because these dollars are going to be flying around. If you're not set up properly, it's not going to be any equality and so forth. And that's really where you hit them. You got to hit the market where it is, and that is the distribution of those public and private resources that they flowing through. This way you can gear those resources to those organizations, to those causes, like equality and otherwise.
That makes sense.
It does. That was a great answer.
But that was a really good question. Really good question. Corey, give me a second. Gemma in the back, I'm coming to you with the microphone.
Hi, good afternoon. I represent Imperations LLC and Zoe Power Communication. Me being as a legal person, and just to touch base on her question, if I know one thing about power attorney, understand if your brother is in jail or he can't act, the best thing to do is get him to sign a power attorney so that way you can act on his behalf. Or if that's the case, because I know I dealt with a lot of different situations where people couldn't really act, elder people, because I dealt with foreclosure homes, different things like that. But the power attorney is solid. And if your brother want to give you power attorney to run his business, once he signed that, you can pretty much act on his behalf legally. Just to add that.
Corey, you got a question?
Piggybacking off of what the gentleman here stated, as far as tapping into those underserved communities and I guess, communities. Seeing as I'm the only one in this whole room in a wheelchair, like I'm gonna have a box, skate, I do a whole bunch of different things. So I've been smoking weed since I was about 11, I'm 28. So I wanna know, like, what are y'all really doing to tap into the disabled community? Because only 10% of the whole world is disabled. So I'm the only one in this building, so I would like to know what's up. Thanks.
I think it goes to a lot of stuff, but specifically what you're talking about is really going to just be education. Because you got to remember, this is the reason why we're doing these things now, is because our community has been miseducated based on the war on drugs. It's a lot of stigmas. It's a multi-layered, multifaceted situation that we're dealing with. So we got to peel back layers, but we have to address it, how we can, though. This is why we have these forums, so we can address that particular issue, though. But I really believe that it's going to start with education. Because as a community, we don't understand the cannabis plant. We don't understand the medicinal benefits of it. A lot of things are just based on propaganda that was spewed out, and also that, and I mentioned this last time too, that means including conversations with the churches, because there's such a heavy influence of churches and influences here in Harlem, that's going to impact stuff as well. But it's really education, because a lot of people don't know the medicinal benefits of it, and then a lot of people aren't even aware of how it can impact even the ADA represented people as well. But that's all going to be education, though. And going back to the other question about the legacy thing too, I truly believe that we have to create a space, like an actual, not a space where we're creating, like an actual meeting type of space, though, to where legacy individuals that are from the community, as well as elected officials or representatives from the elected officials, can sit there and we can ask that legitimate question. Because I don't think that anyone's ever done that, which is why we're having these spaces and these forums like that. And that's also something else that we're trying to organize too, to where we can have representatives from the legacy market up here and actually speaking to the local elected officials here to understand what their issues and concerns are, and then see how we can meet that, how we can meet that in I guess the middle type of thing, or if there needs to be a liaison to communicate that as well. You know what I'm saying? Because as you guys know, politic language is totally different from street language. You know what I mean? So it's about that portion though. But I think we need to create a real tangible space where it's literally people identifying individuals who are serious about it, and then having a space where, like Harlem Business Alliance, I know Regina's been very, very open to having a space where we can have that conversation, an actual tangible conversation, and then not just in the conversation, but starting a conversation, because it's going to be a continuous thing. But I think that's something, education is going to be the biggest thing, brother.
Let me also just piggyback on that. When we do put forth our social equity initiatives on the local level in municipalities, they often look just like this, medical, cannabis, medical education clinics. We work with the medical community, the doctors that certify some of the patients. So we go out in communities, especially underserved communities, and talk about some of the science, some of the, benefits of the different sativa versus indica. So the doctors do that. We also work with a lot of the expungement attorneys about, options to expunge your criminal record. So all of these things certainly fall under cannabis education, the nexus. And so again, the dollars are very much earmarked for this, but we really want to drill them down further, earmark them to specific communities, specific organizations, and specific individuals. But the earmarks are there. That's really where the priority is going to be in cannabis education, especially some of the tax revenue. But again, we put forth a method that revenue is now, not just deferred tax revenue that everyone's sort of waiting on, because the problems are now. The misinformation is permeating now, and we need to address it now. And so that's what the best approach would be.
Okay, just a little housekeeping. We are, based on time, we have to wrap up. We have one more question that we'll finalize with before I let everybody say some last words. My brother.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk to everybody at the end, boy.
This is our last question.
Yeah, it's like a multi-part. Okay.
Go ahead, bro. Question.
The question is, so as far as the hemp industry and the cannabis industry, how would it impact if we buy and develop land and create blocks out of hemp to create housing situations upon the land that we're gonna accumulate, because they're not making any more land. We gotta make it. So the land that we're buying, is this hemp industry gonna be a part of block building, but with the hemp solutions and processing things and such of that nature.
I want to ask something about incubators.
Yeah, the China Center,
All right.
it's literally the same, similar.
All right, look. So it's basically gonna be incubators, you know what I mean, as a clear pathway, instead of, as opposed to a clear pathway to funding, right?
They're one and the same, just as much as what he referenced in terms of how to really build out, basically how to secure resources for your business
So
organization.
that's gonna be the only route, is to get with some other people.
I wouldn't say the only route, but certainly you want to put yourself in the most optimal position, right? Whether you are trying to build out blocks, whether you're trying to get funding for, disability or otherwise, the principles are the same. You have to assemble an organization that pivots towards these resources when they
That's the
start
route
flowing.
everybody going.
Exactly.
So I was gonna say, also, like, we're not too worried about, like, so when you say incubators, like, along the lines of when we're talking about the gray areas and all that, we've already reconciled that it's gonna be people that are gonna be outliers, and then we're gonna, okay, so that's what we on, so we already looking for, overtax or something, or tax
So-
evasion
so
charge for the community?
Yeah, so these co-ops, what they do is they help you.
Because they probably don't wanna destroy the community, they probably would rather have a clear pathway to funding.
Yeah, but you want to be self-sufficient, and so these co-ops provide you great self-sufficiency.
Yeah, but I mean, people who not like really, may have been affected by also a longer history of other things,
Sure,
and other
absolutely.
things, like other communities that might not have the
Absolutely,
education, time to get in here, may
Absolutely.
feel like this is an insult to even come in here.
Well, let me tell you this, there's not gonna be no retroactive, benefits. What we have here is the current opportunity, and you just have to put your organization in the best position to secure public resources, private and otherwise, and it happens best in forming a co-op. That is the ideal way.
And I don't know if y'all already spoke with people about that, but just on a legal level, like we sure we want to talk about getting with each other to make a cooperative. I know the state said we good bread.
Oh, yeah, that's separate. Again, we're talking about self-sufficient.
So coming up with funding.
Like them blocks you're talking about.
Nah,
Those blocks, that's a co-op. Like, you know what I'm saying? If you-
What I'm saying is when we get the information in the spot, I'm just saying later on down the line, I don't want it, but y'all, I don't want y'all say, this is a way we suggest y'all secure funding for this venture, whatever it is. You was talking about a space specifically, like I want you to say. See, I'm thinking along the lines of like telling that some sort of subsidies with these landlords and things of that nature for specific people.
Yeah.
Like the business.
Yeah, man.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, I just want to get these questions on the record. I'm gonna get with y'all on that issue. You know what I mean? And that's the other thing, like where the EA, like how do we even, you know what I mean? Like
You doing it now.
Yeah, I mean, this is
but I'm
what we.
literally not gonna have no time to come here. It's like 50 different arguments. They told me, come here and say that.
I mean, you can definitely holler at me.
Yeah,
I'm
I
gonna
mean-
talk, but I just don't want us to say that we was here and we reconciled with police telling us that they was gonna start leaning on the people in the future. I mean, I want us to have been here trying to stop every single aspect, trying to, listen, y'all
But that's-
come in,
but
like
that-
homie
But
said.
that's something that's the reason why it's important to have legacy market convert over to it, because I'm telling you right now, like, it's gonna be a matter of time where all these expungements and things of that nature too, all these individuals who have cannabis expungements, all that stuff's gonna go out the window. Because again, like I said before, when you're dealing with tax revenue for the state, anytime you're impeding on the tax revenue for the state, it's a problem. If you look at cannabis in New York State alone, $1, for every dollar that goes to cannabis, 82 cents goes to the black market. You know what I mean?
Right.
The legacy market. And it's the same thing in California. It's
California, they
too.
standing right outside.
But the problem is here in New York, we know that we had an extreme situation with racial profiling with the police and things of that nature. Like I said, the form that we had the Manhattan DA's office as well as the Bronx DA's office. And they already said that there's a threshold right now. Their mandate is if you don't go over that number, they're not coming after you. But if you're under it, you're good. But that doesn't mean that threshold won't change though. And I feel like when they really start looking at numbers and seeing how it's impacted revenues All that stuff's out the window though, which is
Right.
why we need to make sure that we get legacy individuals into the regulated market, because I'm afraid as an attorney that they're gonna justify arresting folks that look like us by saying that you chose criminality when you had an option to go into a legal market, you know what I mean?
Well, they gotta have a clear path. See, I don't want a dude that can't articulate his
No,
frustration.
this is why we have these spaces.
Bartender that's in a spot he used to be at. You feel me? Because he couldn't fill out the legacy claim or whatever.
Yeah, well, this is.
No, you may get somebody, no, I'm saying it sounds extreme.
That's an out.
No, not really. It's some people that'll be like, some people, that's like, my man, that's like, I'm not filling out nothing.
Because.
Let a nigga think they're gonna open a store where I done set people out of here for.
Yeah,
You feel me? So, you know, I know we might not be looking at everything. We might be looking from the, you know, the TV version of how it's going. But I feel sorry. There was a young sister, Columbia student. She came down, the young niggas poked her up. She probably just wanted some reefer or what have you. You know, and it's sad on the young nigga that ain't had a short paper or whatever. And it's sad on her that that's what she had to delve into to get served.
And this is why we're having spaces like this, because again, individuals who are already in that space, this is how the word gets out, period, brother. Like, you know, so we're gonna be doing these things every month, bro, like, because we're serious about it. And the thing is, the more that this is why we even open it up to virtual as well as in person. So even if they can't physically come here or they don't feel safe enough to physically come here, they can attend virtually. But this is how it starts. So those people that you're talking about, like, as far as even getting them access to this information, connecting them to the liaisons, things of that nature, this is how it starts.
How do we identify the liaisons in the community?
Real versus the real. I don't know.
I can't lie.
Haas, appreciate you. I hear the brother's concerns. I came by late just because I was on a Zoom call. First of all, my name is Philip. My family's been from Harlem since the 1960s. We own Joe's Barbershop. Joe's Barbershop used to be a speakeasy and a barbershop. Now it's a cannabis-friendly space to connect, create, and be authentic. Some of the things that y'all were talking about, we started doing since last year, bringing space of legacy, investors, people who want to get in cannabis, people who've been in cannabis. Hassan has spoke about culture, marketing, and branding in cannabis in our backyard. We've had people who have Black people who have licenses from Massachusetts to Connecticut have come, or Massachusetts to California and Portland have come to our backyard. So we basically created a space for all of us to do an extent. Regina's been in our backyard as well. I say all of that to say, you know, one, to the brother's question, you know, you're gonna try to incentivize as much as you can to get folks in the market. To me, it seems to be a third way reality is that people are gonna get licenses, a small few. People are gonna try to build co-ops. It might take a while to get into the legal market. And also, cannabis is a community brand experience space. And if you have your community, you know, it's a really heavily taxed, heavy burden to enter that market. You know, so I just think that's a reality. And lastly, I say, I just left a meeting where a number of individuals are building a pre-incubator. So like my family's in an incubator right now for cannabis called Our Academy. But we use in our barbershop to bring people who have been in cannabis and creatives who have been, you know, who've gotten licenses or have brands to talk about, you know, to basically bring a master class and a kickback. If you are trying to better yourself so you can start preparing your cannabis business to transition, we don't have all the answers, but we do have people in our network that can, you know, provide you like branding and storytelling. Our first one is branding and story. We're doing 4 from July 13th up until September. So I'll share with Regina, but I'm just saying some of the things you're doing, we are literally actively working with others, people out of state, in Harlem, to try to support as many people as can to give a platform to get folks to get a piece of this change to our community. Hassan has seen it. Regina and I have been in other conversations. Charles has been doing this work for a long time. So I say all that is we're doing a pre-incubator right now to help folks. And if you, we're gonna put a disclaimer out there, but if you doing your thing on, it might be legal, that's not, but we basically trying to give you the resources and the networks so you can move yourself forward. And I also would say on the 25th on the science, we are partnering with a number of cannabis brands like artists from Harlem and people who are strategists. We're having a conversation about cannabis and health. Y'all were talking about it. We're doing that on the 25th all day. We will be the front end. Will be a conversation about cannabis and health. We'll bring people who are cannabis entrepreneurs in the health space, doctors, etc. And the last couple hours will be DJs and vibes. It's a space. We don't sell cannabis. We don't vend cannabis in our barbershop and our event space.
but it is welcome. It's been there since the sixties. People have been doing, it's not going anywhere. So we also will be having cannabis and science and what's possible on the health side, because it is about education. It's connecting the education to the business, to the community. So I just put all out there. I didn't need to take up a bunch of space, but that's what we're working on.
My brother Phil, Regina, do you have a word or two?
So I'm glad everybody's in here tonight to listen to what's being shared. We have a tremendous amount of work to do. Brother, you raised some real issues right there, and we appreciate it. We have to address all of this. We need y'all to feel safe, and we need y'all to succeed. We need y'all to make this money. We need you to pass on wealth to your children and your grandchildren. We need you to hire from within our community. All of these things are critically important to us. At HBA, what we would like you to know is that we're providing business consultations. So if you call the office, 212-665-7010, or if you email us, we will put you in contact with the business consultant. That, if you're just trying to figure out how you can put things together, you're trying to strategize. And over the months, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a number of workshops about accounting, the law, operations, marketing, all of those various aspects that are critical to a successful business. These are the workshops that we're going to be doing. This is moving, it's evolving. I can't tell you, we don't have a set date or schedule right now, but it's constantly moving. We're constantly thinking. We're trying to connect with as many professional people, and there's a lot of brilliance in this room, but connecting you with people who know how to do this, do it right, and who are vested in your success. That's what needs to happen. We need you to be successful. Thank you.
Wrap it up, wrap it up. Okay, so I'm gonna let these gentlemen remind you of who they are, where you can follow them. You can also come up just after this, exchange business cards. I'm sure they have them. We'll start with my brother Hassan.
Yeah, no, again, I appreciate you guys having me here in Harlem to talk about how to really put yourself in the best position in the cannabis marketplace in New York. What are the areas you should be focused in on? So certainly appreciate the time. Always willing to do this, always willing to provide, good information, tools, resources, work with these brothers, Charles,
You
Hodge.
said it, I'm gonna call you.
So definitely appreciate you guys. But again, our agency, mtnbizdevelopment.com. You can kind of check us out. We got a blog that we run, talk about some of these issues around moving the needle.tv. I'm the curator of all the moving the needle brands. And so our agency side, we put forth these social equity business solutions in such a way that it certainly tailors to what the public officials are looking for and putting yourself in the best position. So we ultimately provide solutions for those municipalities to make for a more robust market, which then in turn makes a better marketplace for Black people as you enter this marketplace in New York, because again, there's opportunities there, but it's all in how you, let's say, systemize your operations, whether you are operating on the incubator level, what your objective is. If you do want to buy a block, you have to systemize your operations so that you can pivot accordingly, capital and otherwise. So plenty of opportunity, plenty of capital on the sidelines, looking for a place to go, but you have to make yourself available and accessible to these opportunities. Thanks again for having me, guys.
I really appreciate this opportunity too, guys. I'm Bro King. You can follow me on IG. Any cultivation questions, any cultivation needs, I don't mind them. I'm always sharing and helping out and building things for people. And yeah, so anybody who's interested in any cultivation help, you can always hit me up. Thanks.
Yeah, check out our website, www.leafspotz.com. We're on LinkedIn as well. We have a company page. I'm on IG. I'm trying to get on IG a little better, but it's Mr. _Leaf Spots with a Z. But also too, I have community board cards as well up here. So that's just, like I told you before, we're dealing with B2B cannabis transportation services and logistics software, building up that platform. So if you're a cannabis business, that's really trying to make sure that you get statewide exposure as well as looking at data analytics for brand performances, please reach out. But when it comes to community stuff too, though, definitely tying that in with the business, but also I have my community board cards as well. So you guys can please come here. I'll make sure I share that. I'm chair for public safety for community board 10 here as well. So I have a very vested interest when it comes to, how we can, smartly address the gun violence here, in the community. But there's so many different ways that we need to address that, whether by providing jobs and doing all types of other things. And I think that this cannabis space is also one of those things that will help contribute to minimizing that gun violence too. But again, come up here, I got cards and everything. You guys can get my community board card.
So thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time. My name is Tariq Buds. I can be followed at TARIKBUDS 2.0 on Instagram. I'd really like to thank everybody that came out today. This is part 2 of our series. We will be back again next month. Once again, the Manhattan Community Board 10, Harlem Business Alliance, we appreciate you sincerely, and make sure you come and talk to us. If not, we'll see you next time. Other questions?
Only one, but we're not time to get to it.